Hello ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Dreamscape Horsemanship. I'm just sitting in the office at the moment to do this quick tip video. Despite me getting up nice and early this morning, Mother Nature had its own ideas on whether it was going to be really windy and rainy. So it's just kind of raining out there at the moment, so I figured I'd take a moment to do this quick tip video. So we got asked, kind of in the same batch of questions as kind of why we use the stick and string, the length of the lead rope that we prefer. We also got asked as to why the rope halter is kind of our go-to. And there's a couple reasons for that. The biggest reason for us is the feel. If you look at the picture on the left here, you'll see Moose wearing his nylon halter. And then in the right picture is him wearing a rope halter. Both these halters are the same size. But the biggest difference you'll see in these pictures is both the fit and the width of the material. Nylon halters or even leather halters traditionally have a lot wider bands of material, which isn't necessarily a bad thing. But some horses have a tendency to push or lean on that, as it's softer, covers more surface area on their face. Whereas a rope halter has a little bit more feel to it, so generally when you apply a cue they're less likely to hang off of that just because there's a much narrower kind of strip of material that's putting pressure on a particular part of their face. A lot of the horses we get in for training are a little on the pushy side. That's usually from a result of kind of poorly fitted or poorly applied feel on nylon halters, so the rope halter just allows us to get the result we want and to fix a lot of those problems in a much more time-friendly scenario, rather than having to spend the time to correct it with a nylon halter, because they already know how to lean against that. The second reason is kind of the fit. A well-fitted rope halter, in our opinion, sits a lot nicer on the horse's face. The noseband can sit and hang exactly where it needs to, because with that said, 9 times out of 10, the nylon halters we see on horses are very poorly fitted. Granted, I've seen some poorly fitted rope halters as well, but the majority of the time, it's the nylon or the leather halters that people use that have the worst fit, just because they haven't taken the time to fit them properly. And that obviously doesn't help the situation much. The noseband needs to sit at that particular level. If you kind of refer back to the picture of Moose, that's kind of where my preference is on the noseband level. It has to sit there both to not damage the sensitive tissues in their nose, or there's a very thin bone once you get down closer to the softer part of their muzzle. There's a very thin bone there that if you're putting too much pressure there, you can break that bone pretty easy. So the noseband has to sit up a lot further than most people would expect. And then, of course, rope halters don't have the clunky hardware that nylon or leather halters have. And again, if they're poorly fitted, that hardware can move around, it can jingle a little bit, it can just kind of muddy up your cues, which then kind of gives you kind of some inaccurate timing or inaccurate feel with your groundwork. And again, that's not helpful for anybody. There is a downside to rope halters, however, that if we're going to talk about kind of all the reasons why they're cool, or they work nice, we want to talk about why they might not be the best fit, and that's mostly because of their design. They are designed not to break. So if you have a horse that pulls back or has a big issue with not respecting halter pressure, likes to pull back, thrash, rear, maybe a rope halter might not necessarily be the best way to go if you don't know how to correct those issues. Because depending on the situation, you actually want the halter to break, so that way the horse doesn't hurt itself really bad or doesn't wreck the facility around it. If you're somebody that knows how to fix those problems and knows how to deal with the situation, then a rope halter is actually good because it doesn't break. You have a feel of the horse's head still. Though for safety reasons, as we always say, you should never leave a horse loose with a halter on. Whether it's a stall, a paddock, a pasture, in the trailer, we will never leave them loose with a halter on. Weird things can happen. Horses are horses. I've seen lots of incidents where you would never know how the horse got himself into that predicament, but he did, and he hurt himself really bad, and a lot of times some of those really serious halter accidents from just being loose with a halter on have often been fatal, that I've just seen. Obviously nothing that we've had to experience, but I know lots of other people that have, and that's just not worth the risk to leave your halter on. So nylon leather halters, especially the breakaway style, they are designed to break. Rope halters don't. So just keep that in mind when you're making your decisions based on what halter you want to use for your horse. Just make sure you're fully informed. And with all that said, ultimately, you can use whatever you want on your horse's head so long as it's well fitted, and you know why you're using that piece of equipment. And that's kind of the biggest thing I can stress to people is don't use a piece of equipment just because somebody else told you it worked. You need to know why you're doing this. That's kind of the big picture of horsemanship, is you need to know why you apply this kind of cue or why you're using this piece of tack. If you don't know the why behind it, you're not really learning anything. You're just following that somebody else had good luck with that piece of equipment. And ultimately, correct groundwork with proper timing and feel. It's not going to matter what's on your horse's head. You can still get the task accomplished when you're using correct groundwork with proper timing and feel. The majority of it's going to come down to personal preference. We prefer the rope halters, but that doesn't mean I don't use nylon halters. Moose, for example, just because we were using him previously in the examples earlier on in the video, he responds fantastic to his nylon halter. So it really depends on what exercise I want to introduce or what I want to do with him that day as to whether I grab the rope halter for him or his nylon halter, because he responds to that halter, like, doesn't matter which halter's on his head, he responds very nicely. Other horses, however, have shown up with nylon halters, and you can tell the second you even pick up the lead rope that they lean on it, they're very pushy. So almost always, those horses we will go grab we'll go grab a rope halter, just so that we can correct those issues in a timely fashion and be able to get the horse to progress nicely through the rest of its training, because we obviously have to start where the horse is at. Just because the horse might not have acted that way or responded in certain ways at home does not mean that's how it's going to react here. You change its environment, you change the handler, you kind of flip its whole life upside down, they're going to react differently, so we need to be able to handle the horse with the issues that they present to us at any given time on site here. So for us, rope halters generally tend to be a lot more beneficial for our program, but that doesn't mean that I don't use nylon halters or that we throw them out the window. We still have a few of them kicking around. I like them for foals and weanlings, specifically because they have that wider surface area on the horse's head. Those small little guys that were first halter breaking, I prefer using the nylon halters because of that. They've got more surface area. It's easier to correct a foal or a weanling when they're leaning on the halters than it is a great big horse. And because of the way their body is when they're that young, and how frail some of those joints can be, because everything's a lot of cartilage growth plates, I actually prefer the softer, kind of wider feel of the nylon halters. So it really kind of depends on what you're doing and personal preference. And like I said, as long as you're doing your groundwork correctly with proper timing and feel, you'll be okay regardless of what you use. So I just wanted to kind of answer that question that we got and kind of explain why we go for rope halters, and kind of wait out the rain, just kind of looking out the window there, and it's still raining away. So thanks for watching, and we will see you guys with the next video. And as always, enjoy your day and go spend some time with your horse.